Let's start. In case I don't pick it up, Rebecca, if Bonnie joins us, just let me know. I think
I will
I'll
do
pick it
that.
up, but, okay, so now we've got three. Elaine McElroy's joined us?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. Any announcements, open session, public comment, public notice from any members of the board?
I just have one announcement. I need signatures from everyone except for Olga and Jerry for the land court documents. I will be in the office all day on Friday if you want to come in and just give my office a call and I'll come down and grab it.
Nice.
So you want us to call you before we come or when we're?
Nope, you can come. Just call when you get to the parking lot or email me and I'll run down with the papers for you to sign.
And what, from when to when?
I'm there from 9 to about 3
Okay,
on Friday.
Take a
Yep.
lunch
And I'll
break?
be there next. No, I won't take a lunch break.
And that needs to be done. So
Yeah.
everyone, please make an effort to get there on Friday.
Yep. Or I should be there on Monday as well if you can't get there Friday.
Okay.
But I'll
very good.
send out an email and let you know.
All right, minutes of November 17th.
I move to accept the minutes of November 17th.
Any second?
second,
Any discussion?
Well done.
Excellent. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
No. No one's opposed. Okay, unanimous. I think that's 6, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes. Yep. 6.
All right. I didn't hear from Alfred, but,
I said yes.
okay, sorry, Alfred.
It's okay.
Not used to you being so quiet.
Not so bad.
No, it's not so bad. I enjoy it.
yeah, but we
Affordable-
miss seeing you, Alfred.
Affordable dwelling units and affordable accessory dwelling units. Everyone have a chance to read over what was submitted by Sharon?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay. Before we jump into this, Sharon, are there any changes that you've thought of after this was submitted?
No.
No.
No, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
I can,
Okay.
yep.
no. I mean, there were some areas for discussion as showed up in the proposal, but no changes since I submitted it.
Okay. Anybody? I'm still on the fence, so I really, at this point, I think I want to hear from, before I jump in here, I want to hear from all the members as to what questions you have throughout this based on what Sharon has submitted. Anyone want to go first, or you want me to just select and just go down the list?
I'm happy to go first. Are we talking just ADU first?
Well, the AD, at this point, the AADU, I don't think we're messing with it all. I think we're leaving it as is at this moment in time.
Okay, so
I
we'll look
think I
at,
would rather go to ADU and see what your thoughts are on the ADU. And if it proceeds accordingly, maybe we can discuss this later on, but maybe the AADU stays in place to see how this would be received on town meeting floor as an ADU. Because if it fails on the floor and as an ADU, I'm not sure I want to at least mess with ADU with it at the same time. So let's for this practice right now, in discussion, let's stick just to the ADU. Does that answer your questions, Beth?
Yes.
And
Thank
everybody else? Okay. Beth, go ahead.
So I have a lot of questions coming from two different places. I worked for the Census Bureau for several months this summer, fall. And I came upon a number of units, which we would call accessory units to a primary unit. And the owners denied there was anything there. And I know there was something there. And eventually in conversation, in some cases, it became apparent that yes, this is a unit. And someone does live here occasionally, but the town doesn't know, and we don't want the town to know. And that was really the message to me over and over again. These were units above garages, units in separate buildings, units in attached units to a primary residence. Over and over again, I would say, what is that unit? And people would say to me, oh, that's not a unit. No one lives there. And I could see the bedroom. I could see the living room. I could see the bathroom. So, and then at times it became clear that these were units that owners built for themselves to move into in the summer so they could rent their primary unit, or they were units that the owner rented by the week. And so here's my problem with ADUs. You set it up as a year-round residence. You apply for that, that's your permit. And after a year of a year-round residence, or 2 or 3, who's paying attention? Because people lie. They lied to my face. And I was just the Census Bureau. So that's one set of issues. The other set of issues is I know people who live in, well, that's affordable. So we'll come back to that later. So the other part of this is I have seen sheds become rental places. And that's disturbing. They're not meant to be rental units. And yet I see that they are. I have one next to me. So that disturbs me too. So the issue is, if you create something that is for a year-round rental, we all support that, no question. But how do you ensure that it stays year-round, that the people are telling you the truth? Because they can say, oh no, we don't rent it anymore. That's done. And now we're doing this other thing, but they tell you nothing. And who's looking? So these are my problems with an ADU.
Okay.
Does that
Anyone
make
wanna go
sense?
next?
Yeah, I kind of
David?
would pretty much mirror just about everything Beth said. That's been my experience here, my experience in P-Town. She's probably seen the same buildings I have. So, especially when it comes to sheds and it does open up a lot of mischief and a lot of problems. And I don't know if there is a way to regulate it. That's the Pandora's box question, I guess, is do we open that up? And I don't know if you can regulate it by right or even by special permit other than what we already have. You know, so those are pitfalls with, although well-intentioned, I just see a lot of wiggle room for abuse right down to Section F that might, in this proposal, that the buildings meet Title V regulations.
Oh, yes.
Well, you and I know it meets the Title V regulation because it's legally compliant, but it doesn't meet the design standard because it's chock full of variances. So from a water and wastewater standpoint, it's already a failed system. And now we're going to over intensify. You know, we have a half-acre lot that has 6 bedrooms on it. It's legal, and it's a legal Title V, but should it be? No. Should we allow more intensity on it? No. We're looking at a $30 million wastewater system just for the central district. I ain't contributing to that. You know, we already got a ridiculous water system, and it's getting bigger, and there's no regulations regarding that. So that's a problem. So I'm reluctant to just jump on this bandwagon and go, this is a great idea.
Got a
So,
question
with
for
that.
Sharon.
Oh, let's see.
I don't know if you saw David had a question.
I did, and when I'm wondering whether or not we want to start shooting questions at Sharon, or whether we want to go through each member and just get an overall. Let me see if we can, David Mead, let's see if we can continue, because I was going to call on you next, because I'm going right by my screen.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the same thing as Beth and David did is kind of an overview without getting into a line item, just the thoughts, because all of a sudden, if as chair, I'm reading serious majority saying no, it doesn't make a lot of sense to continue to go over every I and dot every T if we're not going to do a bylaw. So I sort of like to get an overview first on some of the problems or merits from each member, and then ask specific questions at the end of that, so all of us see where all of us are going. Does that make sense to all the members?
Yeah.
Okay. David Mead.
So I agree with the difficulties and the problems and the lack of enforcement. Seems like it's the biggest single thing, maybe closely followed by water and septic issues. But I'm not ready to say because of that, we just give up and don't do anything. I'm just not, I would like to explore this and see if there's a way to improve the situation, or maybe there's not, but I don't feel like I know enough to have reached a conclusion that it's not going to work. I'm also interested in how this has gone in other towns. I believe there are 7 or 8 or 9 or something towns that have established ADUs, and their experience, knowing something about their experience, problems, issues would be useful as well.
Okay. Olga.
Olga, you're.
Okay, you have to put your volume on. Not yet.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think the AADU works as a bylaw, and this bylaw mirrors it, except for a few different things. And I'm very discouraged about the way it is monitored. And I happened to ask Hillary if she's done any inspections. And she said, let me take a look. And that was a week ago. And today I said, well, what did you find? She said, I've done 0. So how do we need to improve the monitoring and enforcement if this is going to be a bylaw. And I guess if I go to the ADU that's been presented, the issue, let's see where it was. I've forgotten. Realizing. Oh, I guess maybe it's the amnesty issue. I don't quite understand that there should be a 5-year or whatever it was, 5 years, when there's no reason why a unit that's put up to be by right a unit can't meet standards. And I think the town might even be liable if we start approving ADUs that are not fit for by health standards. So
All right, so before we,
that's trouble.
that's an item, yeah, that's an item you're getting into, but the gist of okay.
We're not doing a good job monitoring them. And if we did, I have had, and I'm coming with more than 15 years of experience. And I've not found it a burden. And because most of the time my tenants were Section 8, HUD came in, or HUD sent somebody to investigate and inspect the unit every year. And 1 year I didn't have, in the beginning, the carbon monoxide detector didn't have, so I put it in. I mean, you must do these things. And so I just think we would have a good program if we had somebody dedicated, a housing person to, how many are there? At most there were 15 that someone inspects 15 times in 1 year. That's not a lot of work.
But Olga, I agree with you. The AADU is a good thing and could be modified, but this is strictly the ADU we're discussing. And then that's where I go, I'm not going to go down that slippery slope, because there's no regulation regarding it. I think we should focus on the AADU. That's why I'm not really fond of this proposal. So they're two distinct things.
And by
You can't
right,
mishmash the two. Yeah.
the issue of by right is an issue for me.
It's not by right.
It
But
says-
Special permit.
It's special permit, yes, but it's a separate animal.
This one is by special, this is proposal by Sharon would be by special permit.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a new animal. It's not revisiting our old animal. It's a new animal.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Olga, you all set?
I guess I don't
Just for
think
the
there's
moment.
enough of an incentive for people to do an ADU, that we
Okay.
might as well just work on the AADU.
All right,
I'll put it that way.
okay. David. Alfred, I'm sorry, Alfred.
It's okay. I believe if we're going to do a straight ADU, even if it's with a special permit, however we end up with, we're kind of lying to ourselves. Why don't we just allow 2 families on each lot? That's what we're going to end up with.
Correct. It's called a duplex.
And, well, it doesn't have to be a duplex, David.
Yeah, it could be
Because it
two, yeah.
It's
Could be
basically
separate
making a lot in the town of Wellfleet set up for 2 single-family dwellings.
Correct.
End of
That's
discussion.
what it is.
That's what this is going to be.
Yep,
So why don't we call it what it is?
exactly. No, it's shell-shocked.
Okay, David, Ralph, wait a minute.
So
Alfred?
I've been opposed to this since the beginning because the town of Wellfleet decided to do away with more than one unit on a property. Wellfleet's basically always had single-family homes, other than stuff way, way back. So my honest opinion is,
Mid-80s.
if you want it, excuse me?
Mid-80s, we changed the bylaw and prohibited multi-units by right on single-family properties throughout Wellfleet. We took it away.
I don't disagree, Jerry, but there weren't many of them at that point.
Oh, there was a good deal of them. There
Okay,
was a good deal of apartments and basements. There was a good deal of second buildings on single lots. So we basically, as a planning board, said, let's go to town meeting and see if they want to continue it or pull it off the books. It was almost unanimous, pull it off the books, because they felt it was just not the way they wanted to see Wellfleet go.
but since then,
Yeah, since
at
mid-80s.
when we started the original, and I'm not supposed to talk about it, but the AADU, at that point, we knew there was 59 or 60 illegal apartments in the town of Wellfleet. Not because of code, because we never checked that, but because of zoning. So, if we're going to make an ADU, we're never going to clean up on the stuff that doesn't meet code. And the problem I have with the ADU is, back to where I started from, why don't we just call it what it is and allow multiple homes on a single lot?
That's it.
So I'm opposed to it. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I think that I'm going to pass on that at this point because you wanted an overview.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking,
I understand what they're trying to do, but in the real world, when you figure out what the rental incomes are on these things, nobody's going to control it. We can't control what we have now. Thank you.
okay. Welcome, Bonnie. Volume,
Yeah, thank you.
there you go.
Yeah, so sorry for being late. I was deep into climate change maps and didn't notice the time.
Okay, have you been on, and that's why I was looking at Rebecca, but she didn't give me the heads up that you had joined. Were you on to see us go through right from Beth
Yes,
through as to
yes.
overview?
I heard Beth. Yes.
Okay, good. Then you know where we're going. All right, go ahead.
Just didn't want to interrupt. Sorry.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah. I'm kind of like David Mead Fox. I don't want to give up on the idea. I think because I guess the question that I would ask the proponents is because it seemed of the amnesty clause seemed to suggest that there's a bunch of accessory dwelling units already there that don't have variances or permits or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so my question is, who would have any incentive to take advantage of the amnesty and make it legal? I definitely think that something in the zoning may need to change in order to have more year-round rental housing in Wellfleet, which is, the affordability gap is phenomenal and pressing. So I guess my question is that, contrary to what some of our other members said, if the main difference between the bylaw we already have, which people, seem to think is a good one if it were enforced, and the new one is in most cases, the difference is that the word affordable is taken out, but year-round is kept in. And the space limits are still there, so you're not going to have people, you know, building huge, building any new huge buildings. Most people are probably going to convert, you know, a basement space into a separate apartment, or, I mean, I just don't think, I'm a little, I guess the question I would ask is whether the incentives to do this legally are enough to expand the availability of rental housing. So I want to keep exploring it. I mean, I definitely don't want to cut off discussion.
Okay.
So Jerry, can I speak? In
Absolutely.
response to that, because Bonnie's raised some good issues.
Go ahead.
My issue is, if you could figure out a way, if we could figure out a way to make requests for an accessory unit on a single residence property, if we could figure out a way to make sure that it was year-round rental, and that it was knowledgeable, that somehow the town knew it existed, that would be a very different thing than what I found doing the census. So, so to me, that would be ideal. If I wanted to create a small house on my property for a year-round rental, and I could go apply to the town to do that with some assurance that it would be monitored as such, that I couldn't then turn it into a seasonal rental by the week, or I couldn't move into it and rent my house by the week. But I don't see how to regulate that. If someone can tell me how we could do that, it makes sense to me. Because what we need are units of rental in this town, year-round. That's what we need. But that's not where the money is.
Right. Mike, I got a question for you before I chime in. And I know I had mentioned that we weren't going to do AADUs, but I think it'll help those sitting here, the members. Right now, I believe, and I know we can't say names, Mike, we can't say who's applied for tax exempts, but I think when you and I went over the current list that you have for AADUs, that number was 7 or 8 or 9. Which one was
11.
it?
It was 11.
No, we counted. You counted.
We counted 12 as 11. There's 11 currently that are
Okay,
registered
11.
for this year. Yeah, they've renewed for this year. And those same 11 were the 11 we had the year before. So we didn't gain any this year.
Right, but the town of Wellfleet has a special permit approved over 16 to 17 units.
Yeah, I don't know the
So-
exact, but
I know within 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's a matter of public record, and that's not classified information. That's a public
Right, and I think
document
it's,
who
I think it's
applied.
somewhere around 16 or 17. So I've got David as no, I've got Alfred as no, and I've got 3 kind of on the fence here. And we haven't even gotten any questions yet. I think it's been said by all members that we all know and respect the need for additional affordable rental units in the town of Wellfleet. Just one of my problems, and the main problem is that before we place, in my mind, that I work through, more units, even though they have to go through special permit, in Wellfleet, it would seem to me that we have to prove to the general public at town meeting, or we have to state to the general public at town meeting that we're going to reel in and not look at the other opposite way of all the people that are flaunting the zoning bylaws in the town of Wellfleet regarding housing. And I look to what Beth said, and when Beth walked in and doing census, and the people are not even wanting to admit they have an illegal apartment, and yet Wellfleet needed those individuals who were living in those units
Right.
to participate in the census,
Right.
because we needed the housing for that question.
Right.
And then I go to Olga and I say, okay, Olga, you're working the system. You're doing it correctly. You're having it inspected. And yet you are one of 11 that's probably been inspected, only one of 11. And then to Alfred's point, how many units we have out there that are illegal with single egresses that are potential serious problems. And I know that we need those units, but I just came across one the other day where I never knew it existed. I still don't know where it existed. I didn't ask. But somebody had said, yeah, somebody's looking at a piece of property, but they're on the fence. They don't know if they can afford it. I said, well, where are they living now? And they said, well, they're living in Wellfleet, in a garage apartment, one room.
I thought I hid that one well.
One room, 2 adults, and 3 kids.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not the only single case that this is going on.
It's
This
not.
is going on all over Wellfleet.
Yes, it is.
And if
Yeah.
I can't, at this point, grasp a hold of us adding, just like Alfred said, adding more units as much as we need them, without the town of Wellfleet either, because if the town of Wellfleet isn't going to clean it up,
It's never going to get cleaned
don't
up.
look the
Yeah.
other way, because I know this is a public meeting, but I'll say it, the Board of Health is not inspecting, the buildings inspectors are not inspecting. Every time you ask them to do something, they go the other way because it's not my job. I don't want to throw somebody in the street. I can't blame them. I certainly wouldn't want to be the one to enforce it, to kick them out. So when we pass a bylaw that says, okay, you've got to have not a Best Point and a couple of others that say, wait a minute, you've got to have a year-round tenant. Well, those are the members that have been on the planning board for a while, know how we beat it up when we try and get a
Oh, yeah.
bylaw passed on town meeting floor. And
Or
there's many of us that know how to beat that system very easily. And before you know it, yeah, you got a signed lease, you pass it in, it's with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith moved out. Oh, I didn't bother contacting you to tell you we changed it. And,
And now it's
oh
not.
yeah, I rented it for the summer and I'm gonna re-rent in the fall. No one's gonna check them.
Exactly.
no one is going to check them. That's one of the problems. And then I get into, and I know this is an overview, but then I look at this bylaw. Sharon, you did a great job. Believe me, you're learning how difficult it is to write zoning bylaws. But I look at it, and if we continue, there's a lot of things here I got to tear apart. Pre-existing
Yeah.
stuff, non-conforming doesn't work. Grandfathering, those that have been basically flaunting the bylaw and saying you're going to be okay after 5 years with the people that do abide by it. No, it doesn't fly. And when you start taking all this stuff out of it, it really gets down to, is this, the merit is good, but is it enforceable? And if someone could start, so I guess where I'm going with this, and I know, is I think if we want to continue with it, then we've got to pull it apart. But I think right now, and you all heard it, I don't mind pulling the ball again, vote again after we ask some real hard questions with the individuals if you want to. I think we're 4-3 right now against it. I haven't even hit the water problems. I haven't even hit that the majority of these lots in the town of Wellfleet are on 15, 20,000 square foot lots. Do we want
The intensity.
800, 900 square foot cottages all over them? We've got serious problems with enforcement now with existing illegal apartments. We have serious problems with B&Bs and Airbnbs that no one's enforcing or looking at. We have aquifers that are fragile as hell. So what works in other towns, and this is one of the reasons why, we open up affordable housing when we do it to other towns to come in. So the units that we do in Wellfleet, if 30% go to Wellfleet, they're going to go to other towns because we're all in this together. But other towns that have town water and town sewerage, this works much better because number one, that question is taken care of. I have not had the time, quite honestly, and there's 2 building inspectors that I respect that have been in Wellfleet before. I didn't have time to contact them to see if, in fact, if they've passed a bylaw of this nature, are they enforcing the problems when they come up? So I see tremendous merit, and I know we need it, but I think I see personally, I'm offset by the number of problems we have. When we do an affordable housing project, it's overseen by management. We know who's in there at all times. We know when they move out. We know when they have a new person that goes in that's qualified. Just like the affordable housing right behind me, the 12 units. There's no question that the right people are, the people that need it are in there. But with this kind of thing, even though it's special permit, I really, really have some hard times. Does somebody want to jump in, or does somebody want me to, does the board feel that they want me to get to Sharon and Elaine and,
Well, Jerry, I just want to add to
Steve's
what
saying
you
yes, Bonnie, will you, yes, what?
Yes, Sharon and Elaine, I want to hear from the housing people. We've voiced all our, objections and what we want. And I really want to hear from the housing people at this meeting.
Okay. And they're here and they should.
I would like to ask another
David,
member a question.
all right, go ahead.
In turn.
David Mead, hold on 1 second. I see your hand.
Before we get to questions, can I make one statement, Jerry?
Yep.
I'm just, what we're identifying about the illegal apartments is obviously we're talking about for a reason, and it's related to the ADU issue, but it's also a real existing problem of today. And it's very useful to hear the extent of the problem. And so part of me says, which is separate from the ADU topic, I realize there's a whole other challenge to say, does the town, I totally agree, nobody wants to kick anybody out. But does that mean we go like on this way forever? It seems to me, does the town ever have the appetite to say there's going to be inspections, townwide inspections, correction of illegal apartments, and have the right kind of a program to provide low or no interest loans to make the corrections so that people don't get kicked out if the homeowner doesn't have the resources to make the right corrections. But I know that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other, David, that's a whole other thing.
I know.
And that leads into a subject that, and Mike's here and I'm not sure he wants to even comment on it right now, but I can tell you that it leads into some very, very serious problems. Some of those problems are the fact that you're absolutely right. We may not want to kick those people out, but many of those units don't have septic systems adequate and have been upgraded to even take care of those garage apartments. So they couldn't afford to do it. They don't want to admit they have it for numerous reasons. But however, that's not a subject of enforcement that we can really discuss at this meeting.
Right.
It is a situation as to how, I think we brought it up and I let it be expanded on a little bit, simply because how much deeper do we want to go, potentially creating problems that at least the town of Wellfleet has not given satisfactory discussion as to how they're going to address the illegal stuff. Because once it's there,
Can't get rid of it.
I see special permits up and down the highway, up and down this town, that the special permit was granted by the Board of Appeals. No offense to the Board of Appeals, they wipe their hands after they give the permit. And then it's open season for that individual to do anything they damn well please. And nobody wants to go in and enforce it.
So Jerry,
Beth,
you keep coming back to this regulatory enforcement question.
Yep.
And our inability currently to meet the demand. Maybe we should consider talking about advocating at town meeting for a new position.
No,
Town.
never.
it's,
No,
Beth-
government's already too expensive.
We decide.
no, I think Beth, I want to see, I got to get back to Alfred, Beth, but to the point, Beth, and Mike, certainly jump in if you feel you would like to. Just let me know if you do. Beth, the enforcement is in place at the present time.
Technically,
Olga alluded to it. She asked the question.
Alluded to it.
That's
Alluded
HUD.
to it. She asked a question to the Board of Health, and she got a straight answer,
No
zero.
enforcement.
So
Yeah, and that's
what
from
we-
the state, the
what
town.
we have in place under Massachusetts law
we have a
is
building inspector.
enforcing procedures by building inspectors, by Board of Health agents.
Right.
The question then becomes, does the town management want those individuals to enforce it? Because if they enforce it, many times those units would be shut down and those people would be on the street.
And I
There's
get
the
that,
catch,
and
there's the circle that catch the whole 9 yards.
that's not what we want.
And that's why I look back at this and saying,
So that's the
we're just
dilemma.
adding to a problem at this moment in time.
That's exactly the dilemma. So there are some people living in units, families with children, and they're year-round, and they need that dwelling. And we support them. And then there are the units that are rented by the week, and we don't support them. And we don't have a way of distinguishing the two, really.
It's discrimination. Why are you gonna pick on one and not pick on the other? Okay, Alfred, because I don't wanna, Alfred, you wanted to jump in on something.
Please,
Yep,
through you, I got a question for Beth.
Mhm.
You said, and I know this is all in theory, that if you wanted to build a unit in your yard, to do this. Okay, let's say you were doing that. Your septic system, and I'm not positive, but I think I'm pretty close, is probably only rated for the amount of bedrooms in your house. Don't answer this yet, please, because it's
Yes.
a theory.
Yes, but we only use one of those 3 bedrooms.
Okay, so you have the luxury to go to the Board of Health, in my opinion, and ask to take one of those bedrooms out
And move it over.
and move it over.
Yep.
Okay, now the ADU is gained a bedroom because you moved it out of your house.
Right.
So as soon as you get all this signed off, what's to stop you? Because they don't
Nothing.
re-inspect your house
Nothing.
to putting the bedroom, to taking the 6-foot wall and putting double doors in it. Because you had to open the thing so it's now a room instead of a regular bedroom type deal. You had to open it up.
Make it so it doesn't look like a bedroom. What's to stop me from making it back into a bedroom?
So now you go and
Nothing.
you spend $800 and buy some really nice triple doors, and you put them back on it.
Right. And no one comes back into my house.
Correct.
And I don't believe everybody does that. But my problem with this is the fact that we do not most of the houses are on lots that the septic doesn't make it. And all we're going to do, I'm going to ask you a question. You said you had 3 bedrooms.
Yep.
And you only use one.
Right.
I'm going to believe you for statement.
Okay.
But so now you take 2 out of your house.
Oh.
You only use one.
Mhm.
And you put the 2 out there because the Board of Health is going to let you move your bedrooms around. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, wait a minute. My guest bedroom's gone, but somebody comes and stays with us for an extended period of time.
Right.
You're not going to throw them out.
Right.
It comes back to the fact that this is going on now tremendously. The
I
problem is,
Agree with you,
if we
Al.
actually look for this, how many people aren't going to have the bedroom capacity in the septic thing, and then we're going to tell them that they can't be in the units.
I totally agree with you. And it's going to get more complicated when the town offers sewer and water because
Yep.
that,
Yeah,
that's
I don't want to go down that road.
if you're-
Well, the problem I have with sewer and water is we're not going to calculate it for what's actually being used, because we're saying if I go to the Board of Health right now and ask them for how many septic gallons we have in the town of Wellfleet, they're going to tell us off of the septic systems that are in place. If they're all doubled or maxed out, we're already going to come short on what our sewage needs are.
right. So in my situation that is hypothetical, we currently use one. And if I create a dwelling outside, maybe for 2, I take my 2 bedrooms and I move them outside. Now we're actually using 3. And we haven't used 3 for probably 20 years.
And that's so all you do is you go to the Board of Health, and Hillary, because I've heard her do this, and I've asked myself, you will ask for a deed restriction on your property to say that you'll only have 3 bedrooms and she doesn't care where they are. And then there's no inspection after that.
Yep.
I'm totally with you, Alfred. I totally
And there's one-
get it. I agree.
But I'm not trying to be negative. The fact that you brought it up the way you did gave me the opportunity to lead into it. And I mean, the house I live in on Route 6, I have a 5-bedroom septic system. Okay? On 3/4 of an acre. because at the point we built the house, that's what you were allowed. So technically, I can take 2 bedrooms out of my house, still have 3 bedrooms in a house.
Mhm.
I'm up to 5. The intensity of that septic system was never really designed for that.
I'll take Sam.
You can have them.
All right.
Right, and therein lies one of the problems.
One of the problems. In addition to that, it's not a lateral move in my mind when you simply take 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom out of a house, move it over to an accessory dwelling unit.
Oh, no, not equal at all.
Because it's a single, because now, okay, it's 2 people, but wait a minute. A single family with 3 children operate one way. You may only have one of those bedrooms, but now you have a second unit that has an equal number of bedrooms, but now you got a second family cooking and doing all kinds of other things that the intensity skyrockets.
Jerry, can I weigh in on that comment right there? Because
Yep.
out of the 16 units that we have, right, that have been approved, we have 11 that are still in the program, so we're at a 60% success rate. But we're at a 100% failure rate because none of those 11 people or 16 people upgraded to a 2-stage septic system as required under Title V, and Hillary and the Board of Health have chosen to overlook it. It's right in the regulations. So those are a complete failure. So that's why I don't even want to go down this road. Because right now we have water problems that are being ignored. And that's at the state level, and it's right in the Title V regulations, and they have ignored it.
Okay,
You need
We
a
gotta-
2-stage septic system.
yep. We got an hour into this.
Not-
It's,
Sharon, Mike,
Oh,
I
yeah.
see Gary's there, and Elaine. You've heard some of the problems. We haven't gone into, clause by clause, section by section, but you've seen the overall of where the bill is going at this point. I'm sure one or all of you want to chime in, please keep it short, but what do you think with just hearing this overlay from the members of the board, how you feel this could fly and work? Who wants to take it first? Sharon? Okay.
So I'm hearing lots and lots of problems and not very many solutions. And I'm completely aware that the situation is getting worse and worse as we speak, as many year-round homes have been sold during the time of COVID to families who maybe will live here year-round for a year or two. But in any case, I have spoken to a number of people about a lot of these issues, most notably Jill Scalisi from Brewster. And I understand Brewster is not the same as Wellfleet, but I asked her about a number of these issues specifically, the septic. Yeah, so if the health department is not doing their job, then that's another problem. We need to,
Yeah.
that shouldn't stop us from moving forward to create special permitted year-round housing. Because once you have the special permit in place, it shouldn't be that hard to track it and to hold everyone accountable for it. So that bothers me because I feel like we're using all of these illegal apartments, which I grant you, they're not safe and they're a problem, but they exist because there is no year-round rental. And so even a shell fisherman who may be making a fairly good living is still living in a one-room house with their 2 children because there's no place for them to rent. So I feel like I would really like to see us moving forward and looking at these problems. I took notes on what everybody said. And I have, responses that you, I think, don't want to hear right now, but I feel like, we need to start solving problems instead of throwing them up, because we're never going to make any progress on this, and we're losing ground. So I'll be quiet now.
No, that's, anyone else?
I would just agree with that. I think you could see it as we're throwing problems. I think mostly we're asking questions. If we could get some good answers to those questions, that would relieve our sense of distress about moving forward, that would be great. I think we're all would be happy to accept some good answers. We're asking hard questions.
I don't know how I can hold, or we can hold, the health department accountable, for example. I'm not, and I don't mean to drag anybody's name through the mud. I don't know how the system works or anything else, but
Stop
it
paying
seems
your
like
taxes and they don't get a check.
there
That's the way
should
to
be
hold them
some way to
responsible.
make somebody responsible. And Beth, I do agree with you that another position, like a housing coordinator, someone could really be overseeing this, but we don't have that. So
Okay. Elaine? You got to turn your mic on, Elaine.
I do want to echo what Sharon said. I really perked up when Beth said, wait a minute, I can see this on my lot. And I think that's what we want. We want to bring forward legal apartments with enforcement included that will be available to house people safely and legally. And we'd be happy for you to pull the bylaw apart to write it in the way that you felt would do that. I suggested keeping the amnesty clause in because I know there's a model on the Vineyard they did years ago where they offered $5,000 or $8,000 grant to let people come forward and make their illegal apartment legal. In many cases, it might not take that much money. But if you want to take out the amnesty, that's great. I just think by special permit with enforcement, it's a small tool in the box that we have so much trouble when we put forward a proposal for 6 homes or 8 homes on several acres. People fight it. This is scattered site housing that I think people would endorse. It's not going to produce hundreds of units. It's going to produce legal, safe apartments.
Okay.
We'd love help doing
A question on, side question. The new project you're working on up off of Long
95
Pond Road,
Lawrence. 95 Lawrence.
95 Lawrence. How many units are you expecting out of that?
Well,
Ballpark,
the RFP says up to 46,
46 units.
up to, could be less.
And how many of those units, are those all rental units?
Yes.
So, and how many of those rental units can Wellfleet fill the first year?
At least 70%. At the least.
And are those going to be, for a better word, rent controlled? Or are
No,
they open
they're-
market rentals?
they're affordable. Probably up to about 100% of area median income. A few of them, there will be a couple of probably Section 8s, but not a huge number. Most of them are going to be from 60% of area median income up to 100%.
And those 45 units will have no enforcement problems because they're going to be managed by management.
They're going to be managed, right?
Town of Wellfleet doesn't have to manage it. That'll be handed out to a management company.
A management company, yes.
Okay.
But that's not going to fulfill the whole need.
No,
And-
but it's
and-
gonna, but with all due respect, it's gonna fill a major need with legal apartments that the town of Wellfleet does not have to worry about taking care of, kicking people out of their houses, and don't have to worry about people doing their jobs.
Right, no, that's really true, but I do have to say that, you know, over my years working on housing, a lot of the ADU need has often been for like a family that wanted to bring their mother to town to live with them, but not in their house. I mean, it's going to be, it covers a wide range of issues. I mean, our former congregational minister wanted to bring his mother to town. There were no rentals they could afford. If they could have managed to create something for her, they would have done it. I mean, this happens time and time again. It's talking about discrimination. I mean, our single family home zoning is, Wellfleet is beautiful. I love it, but it discriminates against people who need a rental, who can't afford a home. And our affordable housing is great, but we have people that are making a little bit more than that, but they can't afford a home. They need a great place to rent too. And I think opening up to that view to make sure that the people that live and are housed in our community are housed with dignity, respect, is something we should be looking at as a town and
I
finding the
personally
legislature.
understand that, Elaine, but I know one of the problems I see is when you try to enforce, because the first unit that gets in a special permit that decides that they don't want to rent on a year-round basis, and we go to kick them out, if someone has even got the guts to do that, kick the tenant out because they're not year-round, the first person is going to be the owner of that property, and they're going to say, if you kick my tenant out, even though they're not year-round, you better enforce the list that I'm going to check on every single one of these people that are in legal apartments and kick them out as well. Do not single me out. And I can see that happening
Totally.
because that threat has been made to us over and over again to building inspectors to say, hey, neighbor calls up and complains and says, somebody's in that garage illegal apartment. And he says, well, you know, if you don't do it, I'm going to turn every unit I know over. That's not where we want to go. So,
The
Well,
reality,
Wellfleet, I don't know.
well,
the reality is
it's,
there are people who need housing for family
Absolutely.
members who would do this with all the best intentions and generosity for year-round housing.
Right.
But the reality is that the average homeowner can make more money renting a room, however it's located, by the week in the summer than they can year-round to a stranger. And so that's what they choose. Our issue is, how do we stop that from occurring as we support year-round housing in ADUs? That's our problem, because the economics are against us.
They always will be.
Yes.
Well, I
okay.
think we can establish a baseline to prevent that from happening.
For those units.
Yes.
Well, our baseline has failed with our initial bylaw already. It's failed. So I don't see
Failed
how
with
we
the
can
ADU?
expand it. Yeah,
Well,
it's failed
we-
with that already.
We
Yeah.
can improve it. We can do what needs to be done based on years of experience.
Well, we can, Elaine, only if management makes a decision that they're going to enforce, because we've got almost 50% of the units that were done, maybe only 40% of the units that were done under AADU, that no one has taken the permits away, no one has closed down, no one's made the kitchens pulled out, and they're renting to summer people.
Right.
That's a
Yeah,
pretty
Gary?
poor record.
And they got special permits.
Yeah.
They
I'd
got
like,
special
Gary,
permits. The
Gary, I'd
exact
like to
same
take
thing we're
that one
talking
more.
about. Yeah. Gary.
So if
Wait
we
a
have an
minute, Gary.
AADU
That's all right.
All
and
right. Wait a minute, Gary. Go ahead, Alfred.
I'm sorry, if Gary can go first. I apologize. I
That's all
can't see
right.
through my phone.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary. I apologize.
So I just wanted to comment on two things. I understand the illegal apartment discussion, but the ADU bylaw is not meant to address the illegal apartments. I mean,
Yes, it was.
the illegal apartment really is the failure of our bylaws to date and our town's ability to administer them.
No,
It
Gary,
existed-
we passed, the main premise behind us even starting an AADU when we did it was the attempt to clean up the illegal apartments. That's what we were going after. We're saying, okay, let's form an AADU. Let's not make it that difficult for them to get a special permit. And some of those people will, in fact, step up. It didn't happen. I don't think there was.
We didn't get any of the
single
illegal ones,
unit,
no.
Maybe one unit out of
Right.
all that 16 that stepped up to become legal. But that was.
We don't know
where-
how many of them actually stepped up that were illegal, but all I'm saying is, I think the problem of illegal apartments is a legitimate one. And the problem of lack of enforcement in Wellfleet is a legitimate one. But the ADU is meant to address the ability to create more year-round,
Illegal ones.
more year-round legal ones. David.
Yes, so
And-
was the
and so-
AADU.
Wait, let me finish.
Yeah,
John.
go ahead.
So that's the purpose of this bylaw request, is to
Yes.
create more year-round apartments.
And the purpose
The
of the
towns on
AA
either side, the towns on either side of us who face essentially the same situation have adopted it, both Truro and Eastham have adopted and have created year-round apartments.
Okay,
So they've been successful with them. And the problem with your pointing to 95 Lawrence is, in the best case scenario, 95 Lawrence will be moving in 4 to 5 years. We are many years away from making that a reality. And in the meantime, all the people that need year-round rental are just going to be harder and harder to meet their needs. So not doing this, I don't think it helps anybody. And it doesn't address anything with regard to the illegal apartments. So by doing it, maybe you'll create some more legal ones. Maybe one or two of the illegal ones will turn legal. And it's just a net positive as opposed to some negative impact that you are projecting.
well,
Nay.
I'm projecting that it'll be more, there's a number of impacts on a number of sides, but the AADU is a special permit, exactly the same as this proposed bylaw. Exactly that it's supposed to be rented on a year-round basis to somebody affordable. This is to be rented on somebody that doesn't necessarily have to be affordable, but rented on a year-round basis. And we have a major problem with that existing bylaw, or it stands on the books. So are we in fact going to put more units on the books and continue the problem of illegal units in the future? That's where I'm going, Gary. If we were controlling the AAD units better, some of my problem, at least with the enforcement, would go away. But we're not. And so along with septic, along with the fact that most of Wellfleet is under half-acre buildings. Most of the Wellfleet is in very fragile areas with well. Eastham is town water everywhere, everywhere. So that changes an equation tremendously as far as the number of units you can put up. They haven't had it long enough for enforcement. Wellfleet has had a bylaw on the books for almost 15 years with AADU. We've got more experience than any one of those people that you just said. More experience. And that experience shows me we're not managing it well enough to expand it. Alfred?
Well, I had two concerns or statements in this. I don't know what the other towns allow as far as a studio. Because in Wellfleet, if you have big enough balls, pardon my expression, to build a studio, that becomes a year-round home. Because the only thing you're not allowed to have in a studio is a stove. And trust me, nobody's going to come back to see if the stove's there. So I don't know if Eastham, because if you get caught doing something wrong, it's going to be substantially financially against you. In Wellfleet, with any of these things, if we tell them that we're done with it, the ADU, the AADU, whatever, all you do is take the stove out, have the enforcement agent, zoning enforcement agent, come to inspect it. He says it's a studio now. So, I have a problem where I spent an awful lot of time working on the AADU because I believed it was going to get people into safer homes, which didn't happen, because I believe the 16 or 17 that signed up for this, 90% of them were new construction or rehabs. We didn't pull any of the stuff out of the original program. So all we're going to do is open up Pandora's box, again as we did in the past, 15 years ago. And I don't see where the light is at the end of the tunnel to get the people who we're concerned about now living in places they shouldn't be cleaned up either. It's like it's okay that we have 50 or 60 people living in places that may not meet code. So we want to increase our amount of homes, which I think is
more
needed.
problems. Yeah.
But the problem is we're not willing to clean up our mess. I don't believe that the AADUs, that are the 16 that are out there, are the problem. Whether they're enforced, not enforced, screwed up, whatever. It's the 60 or better units that never even had an inspection, because the 16 or 17 AADUs that were online, at one point, the very first time, most of those were inspected. So at least you knew that they had 2 fire egresses, the whole stuff. We don't even know that on 60, maybe 70 units out there that people are living in. My real question is, aren't we concerned about the people who are living in places that aren't safe at this point?
Not even addressing it. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, Beth was very clear and said that she'd been to a bunch of places that may or may not have had an extra unit. Because I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. I don't believe Beth counted the doors or the egress window sizes
Oh, no,
in
no, no.
those houses.
No. I can tell you they did not meet standard.
Well, I didn't want to put you on that spot, please. But what I'm saying is, so wouldn't it make more sense for the town of Wellfleet to make sure that if one of these things catches on fire, maybe the people can get out of them? We still need to find housing for people, don't get me wrong. But we can't blame this on the Board of Health. It's the town of Wellfleet. I'm not sticking up for the Board of Health, but we cannot blame it on one department.
I wasn't, Alfred. I go after everybody equally.
No, I know you do, David, but I want to make sure that the public realizes that.
No, but the other thing is the Board of Health protects the victims here, which are the people that would be homeless if they acted the way we may think they should, which is to enforce the rules. Enforcing the rules could cause great harm to humans, families, children,
Increasing the
elderly, we
rules.
don't know who's in those places. And there's no alternative for them. So you cannot blame the Board of Health. They're trying to
I'm not-
navigate this difficult situation.
Well, no, I'm
Don't
not.
just mean that to the public.
Yeah, I'm personally not blaming Board of Health, and I'm personally not blaming the building inspector. It all stops at, it starts at the top, and it works its way down. And obviously, the top knows that Wellfleet has a problem with housing and have made a decision that housing is more important to have people living
And
in.
enforcement.
May not be at a standard that they would like, but at least it is a roof over their heads. Otherwise, they would leave Wellfleet and have no place to live. So it's a give and take situation. It's just a matter of, does the planning board feel they want to add to this problem at the present time? Because at least I am, and I think I've heard from other people, it may work for a year, it may work for 2 years, but at some point, it's going to break down.
Yep.
It's going to break down. And people are going to take advantage of it. And the people that take advantage of it, unfortunately, are the people that ruin it for the people that do, like Olga, follow the rules and regulations.
And the people who need it.
And the people who need it.
Yep.
Okay.
Jerry, I'd just like to make a comment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike, have you got anything you want to say?
Yeah. First of all, I will disagree with the statement that the AADU program is a failure. It hasn't produced as many units as I think you had hoped when you first created it. But as Elaine says, these are all tools in a toolbox that we have housing that, small or large, create units. And this one has created, at this point, 11 affordable units right now, as we sit. Now, I know that there were 5 that escaped the program, and they are what they are. I mean, we could sit all day and deliberate about the merits of that. But the fact is that we have 11 solid participants in that program. So that's 11 more units we would not have necessarily had for affordable housing if that program didn't exist. So I think by this group, the housing group that is in front of you tonight, presenting some thoughts towards another program, another tool in the toolbox, however small it may become or big it may become, is something that has merit to at least pursue and collaboratively look at, is there a happy medium in here, a program that will work? And I don't know the answer, what the answer is to that right as we speak, but I think this group that's sitting in front of you are so dedicated to housing that they're willing to work towards coming up with something collaboratively with your group to see if there is something that can help solve this problem, even if it creates 11 more units in the next 15 years. At least that's 11 units that didn't exist before. The elephant in the room right now is illegal units that everybody keeps referring to. I don't want to go into too much depth into that because we've already spoken at length about it. But maybe there's a program that can be created that's ADU type that maybe we can get some of these illegals into compliance. And I don't know if it's an amnesty program. I know the word, some people don't like it, but public safety is important. I think, Alfred mentioned it. A lot of these illegal units, probably are very dangerous. I mean, maybe we need to be focusing on finding a happy medium in between here where maybe we can get some units into compliance, but at the same time look towards maybe trying to find a way to make good positive ADUs and not going for the scofflaws. And again, I don't have the answer to that tonight, but I think these people here in front of you are willing to kind of come up with some solutions and looking at other models. I'm hearing some snide comments about other, about. I think people need to give it a fair shot before having preconceived notions to what they're trying to propose. So, I'll just leave it at that, I really do think that this housing group really has, the town's best interest in mind and is looking for assistance on coming up with yet another tool to put into their toolbox for housing.
Well, I think, Mike, to that point, the AADU has worked. We've got 11 units. We had 16. It's worked. I'm not sure we even expected we get 16. We put it on the books with a lot of work and it worked. But it worked, but it's being taken advantage of. I'm sure
And
we
it's
can come up
stalled.
with a bylaw for ADUs, but based on what we have seen, at least what I've seen with the AADU, it shows me that, okay, the program, the ADU program is also going to be taken advantage of.
There's no perfect
Those are
answer.
those are my thoughts with it, is AADU has been successful, but too many have escaped. And if we're going to do the same thing with ADU, then we're going to have more escape. And so that's
The bigger
just-
number.
It's a bigger number. I mean,
Well, you
so,
you can limit that. Again, coming up, customizing a program that it fits the app. You know, it doesn't have to be an unlimited number of special permits. It could be, 5 or 10 a year. It could be maybe bringing in legal ones into compliance. And by coming into compliance, you'll issue them a special permit. There could be ways to customize this program to make it work for the benefit of the town, not to the detriment of the town.
well, okay.
Jerry, I have a question for Mike when you get done.
Yeah, I'm looking at 8:30, just so everybody knows, an hour and a half. So go ahead, Alfred.
Mike, if we enforced the AADU when we started these things 15, 16 years ago, this is a question, and we actually got the rest of them to either apply or bail out, the rest of these illegal apartments, don't you think that we would have people coming and applying for AADUs, because that would be the only way they could get a rent check instead of being illegal? Don't you think our numbers would be much greater?
I'm sure they probably would be. I don't know to what degree. But I think
Well,
you're still, no matter what you do, you're still going to get your illegals. There's no way to enforce, how many houses we have in this town, other than, people calling and complaining. If the, if the Bets of the world call up the town and say, well, I know there's an illegal apartment, that's the only way you're gonna shake the illegals out, but then we're gonna have to enforce that. But we can add enforcement, everything costs money, but you can add enforcement to any program you do. We have one person in the building department. Well, we could have a second person in the building department that maybe works on this as part of their position. I know David doesn't want to see more people added to the town roster, but yeah, I think there's ways of making those things work if you want to go that route. I think, yes, if we had done the enforcement from the beginning, that maybe it would have been a tighter fit. And maybe that's the way you go at ADU. Maybe it's done in that fashion where everyone has to be enforced. But, I think don't throw out the baby with the bathwater tonight. That was my suggestion. And give these people a chance to maybe come up with something based on your question. They haven't had a chance to answer it. But I think that there's a way to maybe come up with something that can help our housing crisis right now. And Gary's point, Lawrence Road is a number of years away, so that's not our panacea.
Okay. Where do the board members want to go? I mean, I've got, Beth, where are you sitting? You want to?
Well, I'd just like to say that Mike was very articulate. And if someone can offer us a way, all of us want to do this. I mean, we want to have housing, rental housing year round for people. If you can give us a way to make it work, I think I'd be all for that. I'm not all for continuing ways that don't work. So whether it's we advocate for more personnel, or we rewrite the bylaw, or whatever we have to do, I agree, 11 units is a success for 11 families. That's a wonderful thing. And if we could have 1, 2, 3 more, great. But we have to be able to be secure in that it's a working model. So if you can help us create a working model, I'm all for it. But I'm not all for blanket, what we've been doing that doesn't work.
David?
Which one? All right, you the good-looking one. Okay, that's me. All right. Yeah, I'd rather go back to the drawing board and put some spit and polish on the AADU, because I say it was an unsuccessful program because it's only 60%. I think we can do a better job. I think we can improve that. But there's more problems. There's 4,000 houses in Wellfleet. We open up duplexes basically to 4,000 houses, we're going to have more problems. Let's fix what we got and make that program better. And I think it can be better. But through that program, with some restrictions, guidelines, enforcement, maybe, yes. Maybe reaching out, finding out why the 5 left. We don't know. So it was successful in 11, but we lost 5. So I think we could do better retweaking that bylaw than spending time on a whole totally new one that has the very same problems. So,
David Mead?
I think we should keep working on this. I think it's a difficult, complex issue. It gets to everything that's been mentioned: water, fragile environment, national seashore land, sewer, on and on and on. And you can't solve all those things, but I do believe, kind of like Mike said, that there ought to be a way we can do something. And I don't think we have it in front of us tonight, but I would like to encourage the housing folks to keep working on this. And I would be happy to discuss this at future meetings. Secondly, if we ever want to get into the larger enforcement issue, that's a completely different agenda item, really, even though it's relevant for this one. And that's something we could put on an agenda for the future to talk about, or talk to Mike and others about at the town administration level. But for the ADU issue, or the ADU or AADU issue, how to have more housing for more people in Wellfleet, I don't think we should drop it. I don't think we should just say, this is what it is. Things are bad. We have illegal apartments. We don't want more. Who does? So let's just give up. I don't think we should give up. That's all.
Olga?
I think we should keep working on it. I don't know what to say. I think the fact that the ADU copies the AADU means that perhaps they're the same. And I think that the income limits on the AADU are relatively high. This is moderate income, and that we're serving most of those people already with AADUs, if it's not going to look any different than an ADU bylaw. That's all I have to say.
Alfred?
I'm not in favor of the ADU bylaw. I would certainly spend a considerable amount of time on the AADU bylaw for 2 reasons. One, I think it's more financially feasible in some ways for the people who live in Wellfleet to be here. And second of all, I think that it's time that we clean up the illegal apartments, because I hate to tell you this, a lot of them are probably charging more than the rates that are allowed under the AADUs.
Absolutely.
I would agree with you. Bonnie?
Excuse me?
I would agree with you.
Thank you.
Bonnie?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, I think that we should keep talking and working on this, it does strike me, although David keeps saying it's a separate agenda item, it feels like almost all the objections to expanding legal ADUs have to do with lack of enforcement and all the illegal things that are going on. And maybe the two issues maybe it's a larger issue that needs to be considered together, because somebody said, who was it that said that if everything was really strictly enforced, people would be flocking to do the AADUs and ADUs legally. So I don't know. I just think it's important to keep talking, and I don't know whether the housing people would like somebody from the planning board working with them. I don't know what the best mechanism for going forward is, but it seems maybe that longer conversations outside of the planning board meeting that are hashing out some of these issues would be more productive. So I'm just going to throw that out there as a process question, and ask the housing people and Mike, who needs to be talking together to make sure that the time we on the planning board is used well, so that all the I think the objections have been really fully raised. And I think that all of us want to have more year-round rental housing available in Wellfleet. So I just want to throw out the process question is like, who needs to work together and how from here on?
Well, generally speaking, we as a planning board would draw the zoning bylaw. We would send it up to town council once we achieve it. That would be the process. The process also is that the affordable housing or the housing authority is kind of leading the way because they see the need for this, as the planning board does, but they've been drawing some of the bylaws from other towns. This is relatively, I don't think a lot of the towns have even seen the problems yet because it's relatively new. So I think that the statement that was made, and I think it was made by Alfred, the illegal units would not necessarily flock to AADU, but some of them would move over if the AADU probably was, what do I use, Alfred?
More attractive.
More attractive and so, but I guess part of the reason why they're going, Housing Authority is going ADU route, and I will not attempt to even put words in Sharon or Elaine's mouth, but so I'll ask the question to them. Do you feel that ADU will bring individuals or keep individuals as well in Wellfleet, but at a different rental threshold than where the AADU units are at the present time? Is that
I-
question kind of clear to you, Sharon
I think that as Olga stated, the income levels allowable for AADUs are really moderate. They're not necessarily low income, although certainly low income people may apply and some of them may get assistance. But I think that the ADU is more attractive to some people, first of all, because their income changes, like if they're shellfishing families, and their income changes drastically from year to year, or where maybe they make just a little bit too much and they're a professional person and they can't find a place to live in town. So I think there's a need for the ADUs in addition to the AADUs, and I'll let Elaine chime in there too.
Well, I think you said it well, Sharon. And part of the reason why probably even rents for illegal apartments are so high is because there's such a short supply. If you can increase the number of apartments, it can actually become a little more competitive in terms of pricing. I mean, I totally support the AADU program. I think it's great. I agree. If we can incentivize it, that's fabulous. But in terms of providing an array of housing, rental housing for Wellfleet to support all the different kinds of people we need to work here and live here, the ADU is a very conservative way to do that.
Jerry, I have a question for Sharon.
Yes, Alfred.
Sharon, so basically, let me ask you this. If we were to increase the income for the AADU,
Yeah, that's where I was going.
for the tenants, excuse me, for the not necessarily the rent rate, but the income rate, would that solve the majority of the problem?
I really don't have an answer for that. I think that would take that would really require sitting down and looking at the housing needs assessment and seeing where people's incomes are at this point. I think there's also a fair number of people in the population who, while they might be willing to file a yearly affidavit or lease, are not really all that interested in getting involved in the financial aspects of their tenants and inviting government more into their lives.
If I
So-
can add to Alfred's question, we can't raise the thresholds for rents because we're obligated to comply with the HUD thresholds, HUD income numbers, and they're at the maxes now. So we can't just arbitrarily, according to legislation, raise those numbers.
Well, that's because we're given a tax break.
Well, that's half the reason why people are, most of the reason why people are in that program.
Well, I guess my question is, if we raise the rate to compensate for the tax break, are we going to force the people out?
Right, because it's equal. If the owner gets the same amount of money from rent that they get from the tax break, it's no loss to them, and that limit absolutely limits the number of people that can apply on Cape Cod. Absolutely.
Well, do we want the people? Do we want the people to apply that can afford a lot more money, but are willing to get into the lower bracket? That's my question.
Yeah, it's not that they can afford a lot more money, but they make too much money to meet the regulation. And it's not a lot more, they just make more.
So we're in the
So
HUD
why not
program.
just have ADUs?
You make a little bit too much money to be able to afford the benefits of being poor. It's a problem.
Mhm.
But I'll bet you that the people who are in the illegal apartments don't make any more money than what our maximum rate is at this point. A lot of
Some
them.
might, some might. I know some who do.
Make
They
more,
make more money?
make more, not less.
No, who
Okay,
make too much money to qualify, yes.
Right, that's
Okay,
often
so-
the problem, too much money to
so
qualify.
I'm gonna pose just a question to you then. If ADU goes in, those individuals have to go for a special permit.
Mhm.
There is no income threshold. Good thing. We have a flip side in Wellfleet where we have quite a few problem apartments that right now have really very little competition except for AADU, other than their own illegal apartments. If all of a sudden the ADUs go on the market, get a special permit, they've built a new construction, they've got X amount of money into it, they don't have a tax deduction, they're legal, they gotta sign leases. The illegal individuals say, wait a minute, you're gonna move into that legal apartment, that legal ADU? Yes. I'll reduce my rent. Because most of that rent's under the table anyway, they're not reporting on income tax. All of a sudden, who's winning the game? Aren't we gonna play, this is how we adopt the zoning bylaw. I'm gonna play devil's advocate. If I'm the people that are with illegal apartments, I don't wanna lose my tenants if I'm getting more money, so I don't wanna lose them. I'm just gonna drop my rent.
There's plenty of renters to go around.
Okay. I'm not sure whether or not we want to go. I think what I'm hearing from the housing authority is they really would prefer to keep the AADU program, but would like to see a new ADU program simultaneously.
Yes.
Let's do this. I think the housing authority has heard from the planning board. I got a real close vote right now in my head, the way this is going. I think you've heard, without me getting into some problems, enough maybe where you might want to go back to the drawing boards, Sharon and Elaine, and I don't know who did it, but I think Sharon and you both cooperated with each other and did it, co-authored it. And see if you can tweak it again. Hearing what you heard tonight, as far as amnesty, as far as, I got a real problem adding on to non-conforming structures and continuing with non-conformity. They gotta, whatever they build has gotta be conforming. Tweak it and bring it back to us on the 16th. One of the things I'm thinking, and now I'm addressing the planning board. This is a tough issue. I think, quite honestly, to the board members, it's an uphill battle at town meeting floor. I think we're gonna get a lot of flack. However, I would like the members to think, and I'm gonna do some serious thinking myself, is, okay, maybe we see what we can do to draw a good ADU that the board is happy with.
Mhm.
We may not vote for it to recommend it, but one alternative is to vote for it to at least place it on the warrant and let the individuals in the town of Wellfleet vote for it.
Mhm.
I'm cautious to do that. The board members, the older board members, we've never done that before. But that is an alternative. We can draw something. I know I worked with
Jerry.
Alfred, I've worked with other members of the board where we were gonna vote against something, but we damn well dotted every I and crossed every T in case it did pass the town meeting. We didn't think it would, to make sure that if it did, we did the best job we possibly could for the town of Wellfleet. So maybe members, maybe we think about it that way also, is to, okay, if we can't endorse it, we can still hear it. And on town meeting floor, when I move it, simply say, this is here. We really want to leave it up to you guys. And see where it goes. And I don't know whether or not I'm way off base with you or what, but ultimately, this is a tough decision and the voters in the town of Wellfleet could surprise the hell out of me. And I've
Unlikely.
been surprised occasionally.
Yeah, unlikely.
Or they could turn around and say, listen, you know what? We got to clean up our mess first and then bring it back to us. But it has merit. I'm leaning at this point, it has merit to at least get on the town meeting floor. So would the members please contemplate that for the next meeting and think about it?
Yeah.
And with the Housing Authority, see if you could tweak it and bring it back to us for the next meeting on the 16th?
Yep.
If you don't want to tweak it, that is your business. We will make recommendations accordingly, and we will change it if the board, because we're the ones doing it. But I think there are things in there that you've heard that maybe are a concern that if we're going to work this through, that we need to work on. Sharon?
So the biggest objections that I heard, though, were things that we can't really address in the bylaw. I mean, we can, the amnesty, and I mean, I don't know whether you saw at the bottom of my draft, there was an insert from another town, from Brewster, for pretty stiff fines. Just
No,
for
I
example.
was thinking more that you can take out the amnesty. You can take
Okay.
out, for example, you can take out that if you are on a pre-existing add-on to a pre-existing structure, that it's a special permit instead of a variance if you're making that more non-conforming. So I think that needs to be cleaned up substantially, because if you've got a garage on a non-conforming property, a non-conforming lot that's 10 feet off the back lot line, and you're saying that they can add a unit to that, and you've got a neighbor 10 feet away, that's going to raise some serious issues.
Okay, but
It
you
already
can do
has-
that. But you can do that if it's an AADU, because that's the way the bylaw is written.
Yes, and that may be the carrot to get it passed
Okay.
and force somebody that wants to do and can only do it with attachment to go the AADU route.
Okay.
I just think that those are
Sure.
some of the things at least you should talk about.
Okay.
And I will say this, without undermining any of the other board members. Whatever we do, I'm going to try and get on track as quickly as I possibly can.
Thank you.
You as the housing authority, Sharon and Elaine, I don't have the answer whether this is going to go anywhere with the board or not. If it doesn't, you have every right to petition the article
We're aware.
on town meeting floor. It would then come back to the planning board for review. We would either say we agree or disagree and discuss it on team meeting floor. But you have a backdoor.
Yeah.
Some people feel very strongly if they don't have the planning boards, okay, then it's not worth it. But I want to make sure, at least in a public session, that I have at least touched that basis with you, even though you know it,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay?
Appreciate it.
And
You sound like a due process guy, Jerry. That's terrible. I thought you were a dictator. God.
I try hard, David. Okay,
Your image is now soiled.
yeah, I know. With that, I'm going to move on. Thank you all, and I'm
Thank you
going
so
to
much
move on
for
to the
your
next
attention.
subject because that's
Thank
going to take just as long.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Okay, good night.
Good night. All right, members. David Mead. I've reviewed it. I don't know whether you want to make a quick presentation or you want me to poll the board first and see where they want to go.
Just very quick.
Yep.
I wrote this out so that I would be more efficient when we met, so I'm not going to repeat what I wrote.
Okay.
But I just wanted to note that there were 2 additional attachments that I provided as context and as some, I think, good food for thought about the larger issue that, to me, made me think about some of these issues in a new way and made me feel like actually there are things that are being done all over the country, and we could be part of that too. But in terms of this particular proposal, the idea is to do this one specific project, and I tried to lay out a way to do it in terms of process. And a second option would be this District of Critical Planning Concern idea. It already exists as a mechanism. I would kind of prefer the first one personally, but either one could work. And maybe there's a third one. I think the first question I have for the board is, does the board think this should be done? This meaning the first paragraph that I wrote about having a lens, someone looks through a lens of climate change at the town regulations and subdivisions and zoning bylaws, all of them, for to assess the effect of climate change on all that stuff we've got now. That's the first question. Does the board want to figure out a way to get that done? Obviously, we can't do it ourselves personally. So the first question is, do we agree that it should be done? The second question is moot unless we do, because the second is just how to do it. So I just would love to hear everybody's thoughts.
Yeah, David, and that's kind of where I was going is I was going to do almost the same thing that I did with the ADU.
Mhm.
Poll the board and say, is this just something the board feels they just don't want to handle, that it's in essence, part of it has really been addressed by floodplain zoning bylaw, and it's also been addressed by our zoning bylaw. So, yeah, and then because if it's basically, you're going to see, and I'm going to see, board members are going to see the overall, should it go forward or not go forward? And if the majority say no, then we don't even have to go to the next paragraph.
No, that's fine. Sure.
Okay. Beth, you want to go first? You want to go last on this one?
I went first the last time. I'm gonna go last this time.
Okay.
I
I'm
get to
gonna
go
work-
first.
Huh?
I get to go first.
You get to go first?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to go first.
That's okay with me.
All
That way I
right.
can come
The
back to
answer
Beth last.
Okay, Beth can be last. She's better spoken. No, I just say no. This is too big of a picture. It's dealt with other agencies. We have our hands full with just the stuff on our plate that we've spent a year on and haven't made any significant progress. So I don't want to tackle this monster. As interesting as it is, I would say no. Keep it short at that.
Okay, David. Olga. Keep that mic on.
On mute. I would like to go through with this, especially, I mean, if we're hiring engineering firms or lawyers, whatever, to work on it, it's not going to get in our way. And there are other people doing things like it, but we as a planning board should be really focused on climate change. That's my opinion.
Okay. Bonnie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is probably the major, besides housing, it's the major kind of long-term land use planning issue that we've got. I mean, one of the reasons I was late to the meeting was I started looking at all the sea level rise maps that that were referenced in some of the stuff that David provided to us, and I, looking very self-interestedly, looking at my own neighborhood, and I think what we need to discuss really, because I know that now somebody correct me, at town meeting, there was one of the town committees had done a kind of an assessment of which roads were going to be affected by sea level rise. Could I ask David Mead Fox if that?
Yeah, there's the town, there's work going on that now by the town and a couple of different departments and the energy committee. And they got a grant, and that's an ongoing thing. So that's a small piece in a way, important in its own right, but a small piece.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I think that the major question for me is, what is the proper role of the planning board in this big, it has to be a major town effort, and when you look at the literature that he provided, a lot of the mitigation of climate change, for climate change hazards like flooding and severe storms, have to do with land use planning and flexible zoning and, special zoning areas. So it does seem that it's in our purview in some way. And I hear was it David or Alfred saying that, I can't see either of you. So
David Rao.
Yeah, right. It was David. So, that we have enough to do with what's on our plate. But I think that a definition, maybe with the energy committee and the zoning board and the selectmen, about what the planning board's role is, and maybe delegate one or two members to kind of join a working group on the subject, so that it's not coming up at every meeting, but then there are concrete proposals for us to consider that have to do with what's our responsibility.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I say that in a very confusing way?
No, I had questions, but I'm going to save it at this moment. Alfred.
I don't know where we're going to find the time, personally. If this housing thing is going to keep going around and around and around, which I hope it does in different manners. And I question Bonnie's statement if, maybe there should be a task force that the town sets up for that. And at that point, and she didn't say this directly, so I'm putting the task force in my words, not hers. That the planning board's, a part of. But I don't know how, personally, with the amount of time I've been on the board, with something of that magnitude, that we're going to have to take all the lines out of the zoning book and figure out where. I don't believe we're capable. If there was grant money for this, if there was, I don't know how to allocate the amount of time to do it from the whole town picture. I think we've worked at it through the floodplain stuff and that stuff when we've changed, because we have changed the floodplain and subdivision control in the last few years. We have changed some of the bigger pieces, but I don't know how you make all the other pieces fit. So I don't know how we'd have the time for it, personally.
Okay. Beth?
Well, I don't know about the time. I don't know that it's our responsibility totally. But I agree with Alfred that it might be an opportunity for us to join a town-wide force, task force, whatever, committee, however you want to define it. Which I would hope would come from the select board, but if it doesn't come from the select board, then maybe we could advocate for that and be a part of that. I don't really see it as our agenda, although it is certainly our concern. So participating, I think, in this endeavor is really important. I don't see it as our responsibility. So I guess I'm on the fence there somehow.
Okay. This is kind of going to Bonnie, but more specifically to David Mead. Here's some of my problems, David. It's a very broad, climate control is a very broad subject. In this climate control, and I must admit, I'm the one who got the zoning practices and the other material to kind of scan. You know, in this climate thing takes also into consideration forest fires and heat and different things of that nature. And I noticed those people that did DCPCs created districts of critical concern and things of that nature. And then I look at Wellfleet, look at Cape Cod, but specifically Wellfleet. And the first thing, one of the first things I say is, okay, 90 to 95% of every lot in the town of Wellfleet has already been built on. So we don't have a real situation where we're going to be faced with subdivisions coming in floodplain areas. Number two, the subdivision control laws take into account that if you've got a road elevation, I think it's 10 feet, and you've got a subdivision that is over that, you've got to go to conservation to mitigate the access road into the property of the subdivision. The planning board cannot make lots unbuildable if they meet upland, frontage, square footage, and have access. We have to approve the plan. The state of Massachusetts has dictated, along with the feds, I think it comes out of feds. Alfred, you can tell me if I'm wrong, or David, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but one of those two agencies has dictated the height elevation in the new floodplain area in Wellfleet is at 13 feet.
Yeah, that's the feds. Yeah.
That's the feds. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
So consequently, already any new construction that you see going on with major renovation, if it's in the floodplain, is already being built at a climate situation that the feds say should be 13 feet or more. 70% of our property is National Seashore. Most of that is owned by waterfront. Those waterfront areas like Chequasit Neck, Indian Neck Heights, Pleasant Point, much of Lieutenant's Island are all above 40 feet where all those houses are. The major problem I see that Wellfleet is facing, one of the major problems that I see Wellfleet is facing, is what the town of Wellfleet is doing now is putting out those roads as to if we do have a major flood, what are we going to do to get those people to houses that are perfectly safe, but the road's flooded out. For example, Olga, who lives over across Cove Road, and the only road she can get down to her house is either Road or Pilgrim Springs Road, flooded out. In what storm was it? Was it 20 years ago?
Something
Well,
like that, yeah, yeah.
It flooded
Severed.
out where you couldn't get at that intersection off of Indian Neck or King Philip. That's not something that the planning board can address. That's something the town of Wellfleet's got to address. Same as Kendrick Avenue. The houses across the street are being raised, those cottages, to the elevations. But here, the road is eroding away because the town of Wellfleet doesn't want a bulkhead. They don't want to pay for it. So I believe that for the most part, if Wellfleet was in a situation where the seashore didn't exist, we were back in the 1970s and 1960s and climate control was here, and half the houses that we built back then weren't built, we might include a little bit more area into floodplain. But right now, I don't think there's enough that we can do that is going to substantially change climate control without the town of Wellfleet getting involved and facing some serious facts. Most of our town is built up. Most of our town is protected. Does that mean to say that conservation, for example, shouldn't relook at the floodplain elevations and address it? Probably, but that's certainly in their purview, not ours.
Right.
And they have increased floodplain areas, as Alfred said.
Jerry,
Commercial
the
Street,
bridge at
across the
Lieutenant,
street
the
already.
bridge,
Yep.
the bridge at the bridge at Lieutenant Island, right? I mean, we've been going over that for 30 years and they still haven't fixed the Chappaquiddick Bridge there. I mean, that's a nightmare waiting to happen, and the town's never agreed to put a proper bridge in to service those people.
So, and if that gets hit in the middle of winter, yeah, we got
icebergs, yeah.
to evacuate.
Yeah.
But here we had a high tide situation and we had a house burned down and 2 people died.
Yeah,
If
I
it
know, we
happens
haven't
in the
fixed
middle
that
of
problem.
summer, that's a
Yeah.
different story, because you can think that every single house over there, unless they get due notice to get the hell off, is stranded.
Yeah. They're
So,
stranded, yeah.
I think a lot of that is, David, great idea to think about it, but I believe that there are other committees that should weigh in on it rather than the planning board. It's just too big and it's after the fact. Now, that doesn't mean that climate control, in my mind, is not important. It is important. I look at what happened in Boston with the seaport and saying, how the hell did you people build all this stuff? And all of a sudden, you built it underneath the elevations and the roads are going to flood out. And you're going to have 5 feet of water on the first floor of most of those buildings along that area. But I think the town of Wellfleet really has to look at Cove Road, has to look at the bridge going over to Lieutenant's Island, has to look at Kendrick Avenue, and make alternate means of access to those areas. If they feel that the planning board needs to give them some input, I'm for it. But I think at some point there are other agencies within the town of Wellfleet should take the lead on this kind of thing rather than us. I think our subdivision control laws are adequate. I think they protect and send stuff if a new road comes into the conservation. So I just feel that those types of things are being covered and are being looked at before we jump in this kind of budget situation with COVID and taxes down and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not too sure this is the time to take on that kind of stuff. Here, we're looking at trying to do more affordable housing, ADU, and the last thing we want to do is make it more difficult and more expensive for them to even build those kind of things. So I'm not sure this is the appropriate time to look into it, in my own mind, is what I'm looking at. Beth, I see you waving your hand.
I am, thank you. So Jerry, you raised some really good points. My question is, so you've identified some areas in Wellfleet that are potentially an issue. And they are certainly land issues. And I just wonder if we could have a voice. Because you've identified them, we know what they are. I don't trust anyone else besides the planning board, because I don't know anyone else besides the planning board. So in my mind, if we know there are some potential issues and maybe some potential solutions that we could work on, could we not be a part of that without owning it?
What?
Without owning it.
I think what I don't know, and I see Mike Travato still here, and he can chime in if he certainly would like to. If in fact the town of Wellfleet has put out a request to an engineering company or someone, which it appears they have, to review the public roads in the town of Wellfleet that could be
compromised?
Good word, thank you. Compromised in a flood type situation. I think that's a step in the right direction. We have an alternative.
Yeah.
We could say, listen, all of you put your thinking caps on. I mean, I just came up Kendry Avenue and Cove Road.
Yeah, there's more.
Beth was talking, I immediately thought about Old Wharf Road. Leads up to a number of subdivisions, then leads out to the point where you cross a dirt road. Alfred, help me out. You cross a dirt road. There's a 5-acre tract that if someone would ever develop it on the left, right on the water, it would be safe as be, but the road below at an excessively high tide is going to go under. So those people at the end where Ben Zender lived and over there are going, depending on how long that tide stays in,
Ben can be flooded out.
Or washed out, is going to be needed to be fixed on a timely manner. We could, number one, take the initiative and say, listen, we've discussed some climate control issues and we feel that A, B, C, D, E access roads to points within Wellfleet should be addressed as far as climate control and what the town of Wellfleet wants to think about it. Or the board could wait and take the position, listen, let's see the report. We could ask them to send us a report when they get it. And we could say, we feel Mayo Beach Road or Kendrick Avenue or Old Wharf Road is number one priority and work our way down. So there are a number of ways, Beth, that we can get involved either before or after on something of that nature, which I think to Beth's point and maybe to my point, as well as a couple others, David, narrows
Jerry,
what you're saying now. Yes, David Rowell.
Yeah, we have a surveyor of roads, the Department of Public Works, and that's his mandate to look over the 100 and some 50 odd mile road in Wellfleet. Supposedly he's a surveyor, or at least on the title. All right, some sort of qualification for a road engineer. That's his purview to monitor and fix the roads. I think we're grossly overstepping our bounds by sticking our nose into something that we don't see on a daily basis. You know, he's got crews all over the place. So,
but the whole point is we don't see it on a daily basis. This is the future.
We don't. He does. He
No, but
does.
how do we know he's looking at the future?
I don't want to be looking over his shoulder. I got other shit to do, honestly. You know, I mean, really. We hired him to do that job. Let him do his job.
Okay, David Mead.
Okay, I hear all the thoughts and concerns. I just want to make a couple points. I never intended to give the impression that I thought the planning board and our group should do all this work, or that we should not involve other town committees. Of course, it's a town-wide problem. I was more thinking about the planning board as being a planning body for the town in a broad sense, as per the town charter. And that doesn't mean when you're doing planning, that doesn't mean you do all the work yourself. It means you work with other people, you hire people, yeah, it means spending money, but maybe you get grants. Grant money can be made available for this kind of thing. So I just want to make that clear. I wasn't talking about us somehow magically having the knowledge and the time. We don't have the knowledge, and we sure don't have the time. Of course not. But I was talking about doing something that would address what the town voted on nearly unanimously at the town meeting, that we are in a climate emergency. An emergency means, in my mind, you have to do some things you haven't done before. You have to do some things that are out of the box sometimes and that have some risks. And I'm not putting, this is for the whole town. This is a challenge for the whole town, not just the planning board. But I'm saying the town has already spoken by voting for that climate emergency. And this is part of helping the town figure out what we can do about this emergency we're in. I think all of this is going to accelerate faster than we think. That is to say, climate change. It's going to get worse faster than we think. And the more we can be prepared, it's not just raising a few roads. We're going to have to retreat, guys. We're going to figure out how can we retreat? How can we adapt in that way? Yeah, we can change zoning, but I mean, there's a huge array of issues. And the zoning thing was a way to get at, or a district of critical concern, to get at this issue of this is a really big deal. And yeah, maybe we need a climate action task force for the whole town. Sure, that would be fabulous. But this was a way for the planning board to heighten the issue, to provide some information through looking at zoning specifically, getting a professional assessment done to at least that, and that's just the beginning. That's like nothing in a way compared to the larger picture. We've all been saying that, of course. But because something is big and complicated, it doesn't mean we do nothing. And I was just hoping that the planning board could be a facilitator, an instigator, and a contributor specifically about some of the areas that it's historically worked on. And I know a lot of good stuff has been done already by the planning board, for sure.
But when you say, David, zoning, give me an idea of what you think someone would come in and recommend for change of zoning in Wellfleet on climate control.
Well, one example would be, in my mind, is there could be much stricter restrictions about where things can be built at what elevation, and also much stricter restrictions on renovations, additions to existing structures and the like.
But is that not carried forward for the feds with FEMA and flood insurance at 13-foot elevation?
Totally. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Jerry.
That's all addressed with FEMA, with flood insurance and flood elevation. And as you can see on Kendrick Avenue, when those houses are being built, the cottages are being torn down and they're being raised to the elevation of 13 feet. How would you increase the federal height?
It might need to be increased. We might need to start saying, and I understand completely about property rights and how I would be against it if it were my house and all that stuff. I'm just saying we need to think differently. We might have to say, you can't build something there at all. You have a
A little
house
late
there.
for that.
Even the federal government hasn't said that, because they know if they
Yeah.
do, that's taking. So therefore, they
That's a
said if
taking.
you're going to build, you will have flood insurance, and you will build at an elevation of 13 plus. Otherwise, it's a taking. This is why
Well,
the National Seashore has
Okay.
said that you can have a 3-acre lot on the National Seashore. We may not give you a certificate, but we're not going to say you can't build on it because that's a taking, and they don't want to buy it. So, no, that can't be controlled with zoning.
Okay, but my point of this idea of hiring an environmental engineering firm to look at this stuff is exactly, I don't have the answers. What I know is that we have a major problem, and it's bigger than any of us know, I believe. There's a lot of science that back this up, and we owe the future, we owe our kids doing more than we're doing. I don't think raising buildings, making sure people have flood insurance, raising a few roads is going to cut it. It's okay for the next 5 or 10 years, maybe not. But why can't we think longer term and be more prepared for what we actually know is coming? It's not my opinion. There's hard science that's telling us what is coming in terms of the effects of climate change.
So let me make a motion.
Wait a second. I'm not saying Wellfleet can solve it all by itself, but we can have some bearing on what we do in our little town. But I don't hear enough of an appetite for it, except maybe we participate in some bigger thing. So I kind of made my case and made my statement, and I hear all the concerns and the majority rules.
And I really think that when you said flooding, the first thing, and I don't want to get into it because it's not on the, I'll bite my tongue after I say it, but when you say flooding, I think of what's going on with the National Seashore and the dike and how much acreage we're going to flood
I know.
in a situation like this. Doesn't make sense to me. And here we are, we can't even insure our own people and guarantee them that when we do it, that we're going to stand, because we can't get insurance, that we're going to end up paying for it. So
I'm
I
not
think
saying
something
we
of that-
have the answers. We don't have the answers here, but we actually know what the problems are. We don't have the,
I think since town meeting reviewed this, I think it really, and I come down to David a little bit, is it starts at the top, and it's the town of Wellfleet that's got to say, listen, we got the pockets. We need to go out and hire engineers. We need to do this. I'm not sure they're going to, David. I think they need to say, and I'll make it David's point. I mean, David makes a good point. I mean, he's tough sometimes, but he makes a good point, is we are paying somebody an awful lot of money as a highway surveyor to do this kind of stuff. And if he's not qualified to do it, his department should be out there soliciting the selectmen to get a grant or to cough up the funds to analyze all of this. So it's sort of like there are people in the town of Wellfleet that should be doing something that are being paid to do, not being paid, or being paid to do a job they're not doing.
Can I make a motion?
You may make a motion, Beth. Absolutely.
I would make a motion that we develop an article for town meeting to fund an analysis of the problems of climate change specific to Wellfleet, to educate our community as to the dangers, the problems, and leave the solutions to follow. but to fund an analysis of what actually does Wellfleet have at risk due to climate change.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second? David? Discussion. I see Alfred's green light. Does that mean he's on? And I see David.
I don't see.
I have no idea. But I'll be happy to speak.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I
Bonnie
don't
has
know
her
if your
hand
mic,
raised.
huh?
Bonnie has her hand raised.
Right, but I don't, when I
You can go
see a
first.
green phone, does that mean that that basically is their hand up, or is it just means that they're still on the line?
It means they want to speak.
Right, so before Bonnie put her hand up, Alfred was green and so was David Rao.
No,
Did you
I,
see that?
I wasn't greeting. No,
Oh, well, you're
I'm not
green right now.
seconding, I'm not voting. Yeah.
Okay, Alfred, did you have anything, or I can go to Bonnie?
I'll let Bonnie go first.
Okay, Bonnie, we're on the motion, discussion of the motion. Okay,
So I am wondering whether this is something that we bring before the select board first and then town meeting, because I do know that like there's a whole climate initiative by the Cape Cod Commission. They've already done some mapping of Wellfleet shores. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on, which David Mead Fox probably knows better than I do.
Yeah,
You know,
there's a lot going on.
there's a lot going on. And so I didn't hear that, or I guess maybe I didn't quite understand that the town of Wellfleet or the select board has already hired an engineer to make this kind of analysis, or did I hear that incorrectly? Or somebody said they're not doing their job. I didn't.
no, I thought I
I
heard,
want to understand the reasoning behind your motion more, Beth.
I
'cause it
thought I
sounds-
heard,
Well, hang on, Bonnie, you said a whole bunch of things at once there. So the engineering firm that was hired, I believe there's grant money to specifically look at low-lying roads only and figure out what to do. So very important, very targeted, that's that. What
I get it.
Bonnie
Good, then.
said was a much larger thing. There are lots of things going on. There are people are trying to get grant money. The energy committee, there's a lot of stuff going on. I already made a presentation to the select board about climate action and got full concurrence from them, but I didn't go back to them and, which probably would be good as a follow-up, and say, okay, put your money where your mouth is. We'd like you to really take this seriously. Yeah, put it before town meeting, of course, but maybe start with the select board. And if that's, I'm happy to do that. I'm not sure I'm gonna, but I'll think about doing it. And if the planning board wants to think about an article, what's on the floor right now, that's fine. But there's no, just as a citizen of Wellfleet, I may go back to the select board anyway. And follow up on my earlier presentation to them.
I mean, I think the larger issue is that it's not just the issue of storms and sea level rise, it's also mitigation and the vote at town meeting to bring Wellfleet into some kind of, carbon reduction by a certain date. I forget what the exact. So there's a lot of planning issues. I agree with the spirit of Beth's motion, which is that I think that we should be involved in advocating for a much more, complete assessment or at least something to complement what the Cape Cod Commission and others are already doing. And yes, yes, grant money could be gotten for that. I mean, I do think that it's important enough for us to be involved as in kind of in the spirit of Beth's motion as an advocate for concerted movement and investment by the town.
David?
Well, I have no interest in this at all, in spending more money on a study when the town can't even have garbage cans at the beaches anymore in the wintertime. So clearly we're a green community. We don't make trash in the wintertime. So no, I don't want to spend any more time or money on this stuff. And as far as town meeting goes, we're already a nuclear-free community. I gave up my missiles. I stop it there. And I want to bring this to town meeting floor. That's
Well-
the selectmen if they want to do that.
Rebecca, can you read me back Beth's motion, please?
I didn't write it down. I'm going to do it in my minutes.
Oh, please.
Beth,
I
can you
think
sum it up again?
I moved that we present an article at town meeting advocating for a study of the effects of climate control on Wellfleet specifically.
Okay,
Yes,
we're
that's
still in-
correct.
so we're still in discussion. It was moved and seconded. How about this? Rather than one of the problems I have, continuing problems I have in Wellfleet is the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand.
Sounds like marriage,
Select to do
Jerry.
things, ask us to do things, and then have meetings that involve what they asked us to do and don't even notify us that they have them to stay on top of things. Beth, wouldn't it be simpler rather than to take the step, not knowing where the selectmen are, not knowing where the energy committee is, not knowing where conservation is on this issue, to simply send a letter to the Board of Selectmen saying that the planning board is concerned, as well as is concerned about climate control in the town of Wellfleet, and could you update us as to where things are with the different committees on climate control and yourself within the town of Wellfleet? That's a first step to try and at least get a communication.
No, I get that. So from my perspective, if you have an article, every town agency then has the opportunity to support or negate that article. So I was going to the end result. That's a good beginning.
If the
So from my
board wants to go that,
perspective, this whole conversation belongs at a select board meeting. Really, it's not a planning board meeting. It's a
It's a
select,
political issue. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
whole.
because the planning, and I see that because the selectmen can then make a decision
Right.
that the highway department,
They can
Take
delegate
this
it
issue.
in a
There
variety
you
of
go, this is what I'm looking for, that they should delegate particular issues to it,
and do.
and may decide that we couldn't do anything anyway.
Right.
Because we don't have any money in the account to hire anybody. Would have to go to town meeting in June or September, whenever we have the next town meeting. So if,
Right. So my motion was really just a way to bring it to the attention beyond the planning board. So Jared, your
I'm
idea,
taking a half step. I'm saying, can we write a letter just to the Board of Selectmen saying, listen, we understand there's a problem with climate control. As the planning board would like information as to where we are, and
with
where
the
the
town,
selectmen are going with the climate control issue.
if it helps
It
any,
seems to me,
if it,
seems to me a
David
town
Fox,
planner could
David
answer
Mead,
that.
David Mead, wait a minute, I'm sorry. David Rowell, David Mead's up first. David,
I was just going to offer, if it's helpful, I'll be glad to draft such a letter, Jerry, that you outlined, and send it back for discussion at our next meeting. And then we can decide if that letter is okay to send to the select board. And you guys can do whatever you want with it after that.
okay. Beth, would you be willing to
Sure,
withdraw your motion based on
I
that?
withdraw my motion.
Whoever seconded it? David Mead,
I withdraw my second.
okay. So you'll bring us something at the next meeting?
Yep.
Thank you, David. Okay,
In your letter, since I did get left out, Jerry, I feel bad now. I'm kidding. In your letter,
I left
Or-
you out.
or in the discussion on this, I think if you go into the selectmen, you might want to. I'm glad that we didn't vote best thing because we had no financial part in this.
Copy everybody. Copy the financial board, copy the conservation board, copy everybody.
I don't have a problem with that, but I'm saying we're asking them to spend money and we're not putting an amount in it.
Right.
Yep.
Nor
Well,
would we ever know. So I guess my question to that is Mike still here?
I see
Yes,
his name, but I don't think so.
Well, his name is, but he's not,
He's gone.
he's gone.
I can copy.
Well, if we had a
anyone
town
that-
planner, we could answer that question.
Well, that was where I wasn't going it quite that strong, but I mean, he is basically.
I'm here,
idea-
Alfred.
No,
Okay.
no. I have to clarify you, Alfred. Under no circumstances is he even acting or want to be associated as assistant town or town planner or assistant town planner or anything. As you can see, he really is no longer coming to our meetings. He has an issue, and I do this with all due respect, even though he's not here. He has an issue and he wants,
He's
or
here,
has
Jerry.
been instructed or whatever, to follow closely with the ADU situation. That's
I'm
why
here,
he's
Jerry.
here tonight. Other than that, he really has no say in planning whatsoever.
Okay, so he's not hired for that role.
No,
He was not hired. for-
absolutely not.
Okay, that's
We're-
good to
we're-
know. All right.
We're on our own, guys. We're on our own.
Been that way for years.
I disagree. That's not good to know.
I'm sorry,
Well,
but
it's good to know
there's
we
the
had a
fact of
town
life,
planner.
you know,
Yeah,
and-
no, we hired a
It was nice while it lasted.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
a
It was
short
very
honeymoon.
nice having a planner.
Those are the hours that you guys don't see that I spend in the background with Rebecca and other stuff, because there is nobody there
know.
addressing the questions that come in that normally we would pass off to somebody else. So,
Okay, yeah.
Alfred, I'm sorry to interrupt. I did not mean to interrupt you.
Never mind, Jerry. We got there.
Okay, very good. What have I missed, Rebecca? For some reason, I've
Jerry,
misplaced.
We all appreciate all those hours you spend. Know that.
Rebecca, I've misplaced my agenda, so consequently, is there anything I have missed on that agenda?
Minutes.
Minutes?
You did the minutes already.
Yeah.
No, you're good. All you have is your
All right,
next
'cause I
meeting
want to end
date.
this.
Yep, you
All
just
right,
have to
what
decide
we've
your next
done
meeting date.
is the next meeting, we'll readdress ADU. Guys, think about AADU alternatives. Think about that question that if we can't give it, this ADU thing, if we can't give it a thumbs up, positive yes from the planning board, at least maybe consider drawing something that we can at least put on town meeting floor and say to the public, listen, this is an issue that you really need to solve. It's a good bylaw if we pass it, if you pass it, but we want to get it before you. So we'll get that on there. We'll get David Mead's letter on there as far as the climate control situation.
Mhm.
There is also, I will get on there, a housekeeping item on, a couple definitions that need to be cleaned up.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report on either the Hall subdivision or the other, and we haven't had requests. It's the middle of winter, so I don't expect they're gonna pave, so those are kind of dead issues. That's about it. So I'm
The
hoping,
only thing I ask,
I'm sorry.
Chair, is that
yeah,
I just have one thing. Your meeting is scheduled for the 16th of December.
Right,
I'm
that's-
only asking if maybe you could change it to the 15th because I have FinCom on the 16th at the same exact time, and I can't do two meetings at once. I mean, I can, but
Rebecca, come on, you're a goddess. You should be able to.
Rebecca, the first question is, are we having 2 meetings in December?
Well-
that's the other question.
The first question.
okay.
The first question is,
Well, all right. The first question is, based on the agenda of those two, David Mead Fox's letter, which we certainly can address by David writing it, sending it to Rebecca.
Yep.
Sending a copy out to everybody, getting any input back to Rebecca, no talking in between anybody, and then getting it to me and just saying, okay, fine, here's the letter, I draft it and send it off. The other issue is whether or not we're ready to talk about the ADU at the 16th, or do we hold it off to the first meeting in January? Which
I don't
is-
think they're gonna have the time, yeah.
I'm sorry, David?
I don't think they're gonna have the time to redraft it that quickly that would have significant changes, you know, they'd have to gut the thing and rewrite it in 2 weeks. I don't think they're gonna have the time.
But
You know,
why
but,
don't we
I mean-
ask them? Why don't we ask them whether they have the time rather than assuming?
Because they're gone.
Well,
That's a good answer, they're gone.
Unfortunately,
you can either do it December 16th or January 6th. Or December 15th, I'm sorry. Or you can even move it because there's 5 weeks in December. You can move it to the 30th if you want, or you can just move it to the 6th. And that way it gives them more time to figure out their stuff and you guys more time for the holidays, whatever you want, I can schedule for you.
okay,
I'm fine with any of- Sorry.
here's one of my problems. I'm gonna make an assumption that for the most part, we're gonna have a majority through January, February, and March of this year coming up. Alfred may go away, but is there anybody else? Beth, I'm looking at you specifically.
I have no,
Okay, is there anybody else? Because my shows have all been canceled, so I'm around.
I gotta check with my parole
Certainly not
officer.
kidding. I'm sorry, Alfred?
That was
No,
David, it wasn't me.
Oh,
I gotta check with my parole officer.
okay.
Yeah.
Let me put my 2 cents in on that one.
Okay,
You know, if somebody misses the meeting, fine, but I'm just saying, if all of a sudden 3 of you say, gee, I'm gonna be out of town, then I gotta worry about it. If not,
nah,
one of the things concerning me is that if we put this off until the first meeting in January, the ADU, and it gets postponed, it gets pushed over to the second meeting in January. And now I'm running into, because I'm not in the loop as to when town meeting will be, whether it will be in April, is it gonna be in September again? And even if it is September, do we still have to have all the stuff that we had in before in, and they close the warrant? So we're gonna have to get whatever is drawn, agreed upon by the planning board, then set up the town council to review, get their answer back, then set up a hearing, which has to be advertised the whole 9 yards. So for all intent and purposes, we're running close to an ADU
Okay.
bylaw.
well, let's have a second meeting in December.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I agree.
is everybody available the 15th?
Yes.
yep,
Yeah.
Well, let's just do it the 15th. If we just have the ADU, we hammer what we can and we just move on. Okay,
Okay,
good.
yep.
Thank you
also
all very
think-
much.
Jerry,
Yes.
I think we also need to be notified from the Board of Selectmen if and when we're going to have a town meeting, so that our board can function properly in a timely manner to do our work.
Love it, Alfred. Rebecca, would you at least see if while Courtney's still here, see or if she can get the town administrator, see if they're still planning and when? I see you, David.
I will be filling in for Courtney. So yes, I will find out.
Wait a minute.
And I
They
just,
couldn't find anybody qualified to sit in for Courtney?
Excuse me, sir, I know where you live.
Jerry, that was a mistake.
can I just confirm we
Yeah.
said, the
That is great news to hear.
Rebecca, which day did we
In
say?
case everybody doesn't know, and I'm sure you all do, Courtney is leaving the 17th of December, the secretary to the assistant to the TA. That's a hurt. That's a kick. So,
Yeah,
David Mead,
I just want to clarify the process on this letter that I'm going to draft. I'm happy, from what you said, Jerry, I'll draft a letter, I'll send it to Rebecca. Or
yes, now that we're going to have the meeting, David Mead, on the 15th,
Yeah, we can talk
what we
about
will
it.
do is the normal procedure, send
Okay.
it off to Rebecca in time, and then
Okay.
we'll make any changes at the meeting.
Yep, got it.
We
I'll
don't
make
have
it as
to,
part of
we
your
don't have to
packet.
facilitate it.
So just
Okay.
want to clarify, we're saying Tuesday, the 15th?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
yep.
Okay,
All right? Thank
Great.
you all very much. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving and stay
Oh.
safe.
Jerry, I'll see you tomorrow, sir.
Wow, you better hide, Jerry. You better hide.
Bye, everybody.
You all have a
Thank you,
better night than I'm gonna have. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Bye, everyone.
night, everybody.
Bye-bye.